Hello everyone, and welcome back to our discussion on Faust. Today we're going to begin the second of the two sections of Faust that we're going to look at as a class, and that's Fausts Study. We're going to find ourselves then in a completely different part of the play, not just in terms of the setting, so moving from heaven now to Faust's study, but also really jumping over a good portion of time. So it's really vital that we do take a look at our textbooks for the italicized text that's going to catch us up on things that we have missed. I'm going to read, and you can go ahead and read along with me in your textbooks. Frustrated by the limits of human knowledge, Faust employs magic to summon the spirit of the earth. The spirit, however, is too powerful for Faust and vanishes. Just pausing for a moment there. This is the type of knowledge that Faust longs for, knowledge that goes beyond the human ability to comprehend and even to understand. Desperate to escape his earthbound life, Faust is about to take poison when he hears a choir of angels. So Faust then is so frustrated that he can't get the type of knowledge he longs for. He's ready to kill himself in order to escape what he views as the limitations of being human. And we see then that's a choir of angels, right? So servants of the Lord who stop him. Their song momentarily recalls him to life, but his dissatisfaction quickly resurfaces. Faust seeks to lift his spirits by walking in the countryside. There he sees a strange poodle. The dog follows Faust to his study, where the animal reveals himself to be Mephisto. So even from the very beginning, we see that Mephisto is going to be characterized as someone who works through deceit. Faust tries to hold the devil, but in vain. So again, Faust is going to try to grasp at this other spirit, right? Because Faust, in seeing Mephisto, would have seen the type of unearthly knowledge that he craves, right? So he tries to grasp Mephisto, but it fails. Mephisto soon returns, however, and offers a remedy for Faust's unhappiness. So our focus then for this portion of the text is to find out what happens when Mephisto presents his proposition to Faust. So that bet, giving Faust what he longs for in exchange for his soul. And then finally, we're going to have a pause and reflect question that I will post as a question assignment on Google Classroom, that is. And the question is this: what reasons does Faust give for being so willing to give up his soul? So after you watch the video and before midnight, April 23rd, so you'll have about a full day and a bit to answer the question, why do we see Faust being so willing to give up something so precious for the sake of spiritual knowledge? Stop playing with your melancholy that, like a vulture, ravages your breast. The worst of company still cures this folly, for you are human with the rest. Yet that is surely not to say that you should join the herd you hate. I'm not one of the great, but if you want to make your way through the world with me united, I should surely be delighted to be yours, as of now, your companion, if you allow. And if you like the way I behave, I shall be your servant, your slave. And in return, what do you hope to take? There's so much time, so why insist? No, the devil is an egoist and would not just for heaven's sake turn into a philanthropist. Make your conditions very clear. Where such a servant lives, danger is near. Here, you shall be the master, I be bond, and at your nod I'll work incessantly. But when we meet again beyond, then you shall do the same for me. Of the beyond I have no thought. When you reduce this world to naught, the other one may have its turn. My joys come from this earth, and there, that sun is burnt on my despair. Once I have left those, I don't care. What happens is of no concern. I do not even wish to hear whether beyond they hate and love, whether in that other sphere one realms below and one above. So minded, dare it cheerfully. Commit yourself, and you shall see my arts with joy. I'll give you more than any man has seen before. What would you, wretched devil, offer? Was ever a man's spirit in its noble striving grasped by your like, devilish scoffer? But have you food that is no satisfying, red gold that rolls off without rest, quicksilver-like over your skin? A game in which no man can win? A girl who, lying at my breast, ogles already to entice my neighbor? An honor that perhaps seems best, though like a comet it will turn to vapor? Show me fruit that, before we pluck them, rot, and trees whose foliage every day makes new. Such a commission scares me not. With such things I can wait on you. But, worthy friend, the time comes when we would recline in peace and feast on something good. If ever I recline, calmed on a bed of sloth, you may destroy me then and there. If ever flattering you should wile me that in myself I find delight, if with enjoyment you beguile me, then break on me eternal night. This bet I offer. I accept it. Right. If to the moment I should say, abide, you are so fair, put me in fetters on that day, I wish to perish then, I swear. Then let the death bell ever toll. Your service done, you shall be free. The clock may stop, the hand may fall, as time comes to an end for me. Consider it, for we shall not forget it. That is a right you need not waive. I did not boast, and I shall not regret it. As I grow stagnant, I shall be a slave, whether or not to anyone indebted. We'll now begin by looking at the dialogue of each of the two characters we see in this section, so Mephisto and Faust. And just like we did last time, looking at the way that they speak, so not just the diction that they choose, but also the tone that's implied, gives us insight into their character, and particularly into their hopes and their desires. And as we begin, we're going to also compare that to what we saw in the previous section. So we understand now how Mephisto functions. He functions in a place of sarcasm and wit and humor, but he's also very cunning. And we also saw that the Lord, right, is not one to be drawn into that cunning very easily. So now we need to see if Faust is made of the same firm stuff, or if he, in the end, is going to succumb to the wiles of Mephisto. So we begin by seeing that, in a sense, Mephisto is still carrying this sarcastic and really disdainful tone towards Faust, and he, in a sense, makes light of the anguish that Faust feels. He tells him to stop playing. If you've ever been in a place of deep sorrow, you long for something, you just can't have it, right? You feel those emotions intensely, and they're very real. And Mephisto here is acting as if Faust is simply playing some game. But he quickly transitions right into trying to show that he really understands the trappings of human emotion. And he does that with the use of that simile there, that this melancholy, like a vulture, is ravaging your breast, meaning it's tearing you apart. And in reality, through this scene, we come to find that's true. We already know that Faust has attempted to kill himself rather than deal with the pain that he feels. So Mephisto rightly picks up on the severity of what's happening with Faust, but he completely misses the point, right? His initial suggestion there is that even the worst of company, meaning even the worst of mankind, could help you get over your melancholy, right? You're just human, get over it. But again, just like we saw in the scene with the Lord, he's quick to play the character who is able to have compassion and to sympathize. And he says, but you shouldn't join the herd that you hate. So using language specifically to help Faust distinguish himself from the rest of mankind. And this is important because remember, that's something that Faust is going to long for, and something also that's true of romantic heroes in general, right? This desire to be distinguished, to be unique, to have these crazy accomplishments. But also coming along with that, this dark and brooding character. Mephisto at the same point is also going to play down his own sense of self-worth. He says, I'm not one of the great, but if you want, unite yourself with me. We'll be pals. and I'm sure that you'll be happy about it, be delighted. We already fully know that Mephisto views himself very highly, even more highly than the Lord himself. So we know that we can't trust the words that are coming out of Mephisto's mouth right now. He's falsely diminishing himself in an attempt to lure Faust into this bet. And lastly, on this side, or slide rather, we see that he begins to set the bait for Faust to claim this bet with him. So he's saying that I will be yours. I'll be your companion. If you, Faust, allow me, I'll even be your slave. I'll be your servant. But he sneakily puts in that word, now, meaning that he is going to offer Faust whatever he wants, so long as Faust is alive. But as we know, the moment Faust dies, Mephisto will be able to claim his soul. And now we're introduced to Faust. And we see from the very beginning that he is not an idiot, right? He knows what Mephisto is about. He says, well, what do you want to take? What do you want in exchange? So he immediately sees through the flattery of Mephisto, just like the Lord did, right? So perhaps there's truth in the first scene, what we heard the Lord saying in terms of Faust being counted among his servants. Right? So Faust is not ignorant to the designs of the devil. And Mephisto, again, relying on his charm and on his deceit. Right? There's so much time to work out what I want. Why do you insist on hearing that now? So again, trying to get Faust away from the specifics of the bet. Because as we're going to learn, the specifics of the bet do not look good for Faust in a long-term perspective. And again here, Faust clearly knows what Mephisto is up to. Because the devil's an egoist, meaning Satan is full of himself. He's not someone who would act as a philanthropist, meaning someone who does work for charity, who provides for those who are less fortunate. That's not what the devil is about, right? And so he very clearly shows to Mephisto that he's wary of him, right? That you, being a servant to me, only speaks danger. And now, in order to get away from this even bigger problem that Faust has brought up, right? So in the beginning it was, well, Mephisto, what do you want? But now we have this bigger issue of why should I align myself with Mephisto at all? Because Mephisto is just going to bring trouble. It's this prompting that causes Mephisto then to begin to say exactly what the terms of the bet will be. And here is where the truth is revealed, right? That here on earth, Faust will be the master over Mephisto. And now we might be thinking, Mephisto has proven himself just as much of an egoist as the devil himself. So why would he do that? And that's because when Faust dies, when they meet again in the beyond or the afterlife, then Faust will have to serve Mephisto instead. And so Mephisto is doing something very brilliant here, right? He's telling the truth, but he's also couching it in language that shows that he can give Faust exactly what he wants, right? Playing to the desire that Faust has to have knowledge that surpasses any human being. And this is ultimately going to be what sets the trap for Faust. And here we begin to see the depth of the torment of a romantic hero. And he goes on to say that he really doesn't care about the afterlife. He states that he has given no thought to the beyond, that when he dies, when he passes into the afterlife, sure, Mephisto can have his way with him, because what matters most to him, as he says here, are the joys that come from this earth. But there's a problem. He says, that sun has burnt on my despair. So remember, what does he long for? Those joys. Yeah, that's representative of his passion for a deeper knowledge. And now he's saying that the sun has burnt on this despair, right? That he's come to realize, right? Sun or light being a symbol for intellect, for reason, for logic, that there's no way that he, Faust, could ever get the type of knowledge he desires here on earth. And as a result, he really doesn't care what waits for him in the afterlife. Again, a fact that's highlighted in our knowledge that he's attempted already to kill himself. And here he is again just continuing to stress that he really doesn't care at all what happens at the other side of death, which is interesting in thinking for a moment in terms of Dante, because that was all Dante was focused on, right? It drove him on that entire journey. And so we here see the opposite, right? That what's going to drive Faust on this entire journey, this deal with the devil, is his lack of care, rather ignorantly so, for what happens after death. But obviously, Mephisto is very happy about this, and he uses his own words, right, Faust's words, to lure him in. He said, okay, if you really don't care about what happens in the afterlife, dare it cheerfully. I mean, put your money where your mouth is. If you really don't care that much, commit to a bet with me, and I'll give you what you want. I'll give you even more than that. He even says, I'll give you more than any man has seen before. And this is interesting because here we see not just the pride of Mephisto, the fact that he believes he can give Faust above and beyond what he expects, but also a little bit in terms of the pride of Faust. So a characteristic that Mephisto and Faust share in common, in addition to their sarcasm, right? That this is the type of knowledge Faust wants. He's not content with what he has, and he believes that he should have more. But Faust is not going to react as kindly as we think to this offer. Right? He's not afraid of Mephisto, and he very clearly and sarcastically speaks down to him. Right? He even questions if Mephisto can really give him what he wants. And in order to highlight the questions that he has, he goes through a series of challenges, right? Things that he wants to be able to see that no human could grant him. I'm just going to hone in on a few of these. So the first is to show food that is not satisfying. And here he doesn't mean food that doesn't taste good. Very easily, I'm sure a number of us could come up with options to satisfy Faust. Here he means food that when you eat, you could eat and eat and eat, you're never full. He wants to see that, right? Which is physically impossible. Eventually you're going to be full. Right, physically speaking, whether or not your mind wants you or tells you to stop eating. Then also a game in which no man can win. Right, that's the essence of a game, of a challenge. There has to be a winner. And then here there's rather an odd one, right? Next, he says, a girl who, lying at my breast or chest, ogles already to entice my neighbor. So here this image of two lovers together intimately, and in that most intimate of moments, she already is thinking and even acting out to entice and to allure that person's neighbor. So we should be getting onto this understanding that all the things that he wants to see are very negative, which is interesting because it shows perhaps the emotional depth of dissatisfaction and despair that Faust is seeing. He doesn't want to see positive things. He even goes on to see, I want to see fruit that on the very tree begins to rot, right? Again, another negative impossibility. And also trees whose foliage every day makes new. So this idea that we constantly have the four seasons rotating not in a year, but in a day. But Mephisto is going to show that he is not scared of this challenge, right? Simply says, bring it on, right? Mephisto's not daunted by anything. Whether or not he's going to be able to give these things to Faust is another thing. But he, again, shifts back into that deceitful, cunning nature. He says, sure, friend, I will give you these things, but now let's take some time to recline in peace. Again, to distract Faust from the specifics of the bet. But we see that Faust doesn't want to recline at all. In fact, he goes through a series of statements saying, if ever I become satisfied or lazy. Mephisto, if your flattery ever works on me, or even if, here he says, if I find enjoyment, meaning if he finds simple pleasure out of life, he says then, break on me eternal night, meaning, Mephisto, you can bring forth my death. And this is interesting because this goes above and beyond what Mephisto is even asked of the bet. So Faust is amping it up a stake, which again shows his pride. He's so convinced, right, that none of the earthly normal pleasures of life will be enough for him, that he can only be content with these spiritual ideas of knowledge. And Mephisto, wisely so, immediately accepts, right? Because he should realize, like we have, that this is an even better bet because he has more options now to end Faust's life earlier. But Faust doesn't stop there. He continues to keep going, right? He even asks Mephisto, right? Again, end my side of the bet immediately, even for a moment, I should say, right, that I am content. Again, speaking to the pride that we see in Faust. But interestingly here, Faust never mentions his obligations to Mephisto on the other side, right, in the afterlife. So again, showing not only Faust's pride, but also his lack of foresight. Because you and I both know, thinking in terms of our time on earth, it's very, very short. When you think about eternity, that's literally forever. And eternity is not something that Faust is even contemplating at this point. And then finally, we end with Mephisto again saying that, okay, you have your bet and be careful because I'm not going to forget it. And then Faust finishing up his last few lines in this part here by claiming that not to worry. Please do remember because I didn't boast and I promise I'm not going to regret it. Because he believes either way, with or without Mephisto, that in this life he's grown stagnant or really just lacking growth in terms of what he wants to achieve. So either way, he believes himself trapped, enslaved. That is it for video number 20. In our preview for video number 21, we are going to see, as Lucifer on the right is reminding us, that Faust is going to get into the depths of his deal with the devil. So please do make sure that you continue to take notes as you're watching these videos, because at the end of our video series on Fausts Study, we'll have about 2 more parts. I am going to assign another worksheet, just like you had for a prologue in heaven, that will be due when the last video is posted. So if you're taking notes now as you're watching, it's much easier. And then finally, I just have a really simple, short assignment. All you gotta do, finish watching this video, which you should have if you've gotten here by now, and then answer this question posted on Google Classroom. What reasons does Faust give for being so willing to give up his soul? Does this seem reasonable to you? So I'm asking your opinion, based on what we know about him. So that needs to be a short answer, right? A minimum of 7 sentences, but not too much more. And I would like everyone to submit their answer to that question by midnight on April 23rd. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.